Welcome back to the Waterboyz podcast. This is episode 8. Later on in the show, we have an interview with a curler today, Mitchell Schut, part of the team curling out of Cornwall this year. They just went to nationals in the Canadian World Juniors.
Oh yeah, out there in Saskatoon, right?
Yeah. And they placed 7th in that.
7th total, 4th in the pool.
Yeah, yep. And he's gone to nationals 4 times now. He talks about playing competitive for a long time now. He's been playing for 15 years. He's also talks about how he played off island and how that gave him a lot more experience playing against the harder teams when he goes to nationals. But first off, we want to talk about
Super Bowl.
The big
game.
Big bowl.
The show, the game, the big one. For all the marbles, Rams come up with it, Juddy. Were you surprised, and how surprised were you?
I was very shocked. I had the Bengals.
Same here.
Because, it's the Cinderella story. You got to cheer for the Cinderella story.
That momentum means a lot, and to be stopped by that team, I wasn't too surprised, but I was surprised in the fashion that it happened because the Bengals really hung on that first half.
Yeah, and it ended up being a close game. They got away with one right at the start of the second half that led to a touchdown.
Yeah. that was definitely an egregious call that was missed. But
the Rams got one back late in the game where I thought it was in a holding call on Luke Wilson, I'm pretty sure is what the linebacker's name is. Got called for holding on Cooper Kupp, which was a 3rd and goal, which would have made it a 4th and goal because he dropped the pass. But
there's a little bit of back and forth there, though. It's hard to make those calls, but at the same time, you're going to have major calls like that in such a big game.
So, overall, I thought the game itself was entertaining from start to finish. I thought it was pretty good game. No blowouts or no.
A really good back and forth in that second half too. Offensively for the Bengals, they kind of shuffle a little bit, but the Rams kind of
But it wasn't like a defense took over game.
No.
It was offensive, had their chances.
Yeah, there was no shootout on one side of the ball.
No.
And it really came down to just Matthew Stafford connecting with Cooper Kupp.
Yeah. That's basically what it came down to. Taking
frankly,
over in the fourth quarter.
Coverage by Apple. Yeah. He didn't look good in the second half of that game. I think, I don't know if the spotlights were too big for him, if it was just kind of shaking his boots a little bit, but thought he could get that sack on the blown coverage there. But it's a dangerous move to pull, and especially in a game like that with a wide receiver like that, with a connection with Matthew Stafford. That's going to lead to a touchdown.
He got roasted and ripped apart on Twitter and on social media after the game. Because, like you said, he just did not look engaged out there. He literally was a weakness that the Rams just exploited every single time they could.
Yep.
Because he was the weakest player on the field.
You are the weakest link. And, it's sad to see that because I was really rooting for Cincy. I've always been the type, if my team, the Chiefs, get beat in the playoffs, I want whoever beat us to win. It's a sportsmanship thing, but that's not really my cup of tea. But it's just more of I want to get beat by the champs.
Yeah.
And they did show a respectful showing. And they really came out and, frankly, in that fourth quarter, there for half of it, 7-8 minutes of the fourth quarter, Aaron Donald, Von Miller, that defense looked a little worried on the sidelines. Matthew Stafford looked a little worried on the sidelines, and I was like, they might have a chance. We might see a Bengals victory.
I was thinking when they took over the game, and also when they went down, or when Los Angeles went up 23-20, I thought, all right, this is Joe Burrow's iconic moment here.
Okay, so last drive of the game, let's break this down. Come out of the end zone, their own end zone from that touchback, and looked pretty good. And then the final play, Justin.
Of that fourth down, yeah. Basically, the offensive line, I think, held up for 0.5 seconds probably.
Yeah.
And then they were just...
They allowed 7 sacks that game for a loss of 43 yards.
And they just couldn't hold up. It was the whole second half they fell apart, and they needed to hold up for one play, and 0.5 seconds longer than what they did.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get it done against Aaron Donald and the rest of the company.
And then out there on the side, on that post route, you have a
Jamar Chase
receiver.
Burnt Jalen Ramsey for the second time this game.
Had him on the ground like a Derrick Henry stiff arm.
Yeah, and Joe Burrow has 0.5 or a second longer.
Yeah.
It's a game-winning touchdown, in my opinion.
Yeah, football's a game of milliseconds. It's a game of inches, but man.
It burns to see that photo of Jalen
The
Ramsey.
angle from the sideline of Jalen Ramsey getting burned.
Ground.
You know, you had Jamar Chase, and then you just see in the background Joe
And
Burrow
also,
getting sacked.
I just want to bring this up because it wasn't really brought up a lot. The buddy, I forget his name. It was a running back that Joe Burrow tried to pitch it to.
Yes.
And for some reason,
Little RPO.
Yeah, but for some reason, it's the fourth. You're on your fourth down. 39 seconds left in the game of the Super Bowl, down by 3, and you're telling me you're not going to dive for that ball that literally lands right beside your feet?
Oh, yeah.
That was bad. That was really bad. I would have thought you would have
just the last chance.
Yeah,
the last chance because he
would
had
have done everything to get that ball,
and he had a little gap.
It looked
that
like he
would have closed up.
It looked like he was going to catch it.
Yeah, and I think that gap would have closed up. He had about 5 yards split, and he was right in the middle of it, about 2.5 yards.
All he needed was 1 yard.
If he would have just, and it's hard to see that camera angle to down on the field, but you take a look at the different angles, and it looks
like he could have had it. I really do think he could have had it if he would have dived for it.
I'm with you
there. He for some reason did not. And that cost them. And then the other thing that cost them, I thought, and it was the stupidest penalty I've seen in a long time, when the inactive player came onto the field to celebrate the interception, and then they get a 15-yard penalty for that.
The get back coach there.
Yeah. I would have been, if I was the coach, I would have been losing it at that point.
Oh, yeah.
But
you preach that from P.E.I. football.
Yeah, you shouldn't be ever on the field if you're not dressed.
Yeah.
I don't know why he did that. And then the MVP of the game, Cooper Kupp. Grant, what do you think of that?
I think that's deserved. Cooper Kupp, it's really hard to not take in outside factors in the previous games when determining the MVP of the Super Bowl.
I do think
Cooper Kupp got them there.
Yeah, I think he had the best season for a wide receiver ever.
Oh yeah,
but
undoubtedly. But in the game, he looked good.
He did look good. He had 8 receptions for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. Now I'll give it to you. Aaron Donald, great game. Von Miller, great game. They won the Super Bowl because of Aaron Donald, 99 rating, off the edge with a swim move to the sack on Joe Burrow. But how hard is it to give an MVP to a defensive player, Justin?
I mean, back in 2015, they gave it to Von Miller in the Super Bowl.
7 years is a long time.
I mean, I still think that
the game has changed in 7 years.
But Aaron Donald made so many plays yesterday, and if he's not on that field, I don't think they win the game at all.
It's real impressive. Don't get me wrong, and he had a great game.
He had an outstanding game, but I do think, in my personal opinion, I thought Aaron Donald deserved MVP, but I think Cooper Kupp was deserving as well. I would have preferred Aaron Donald to win that. But Matthew Stafford didn't deserve it, in my opinion.
No, he had a great season. And for him to make that trade and get a team around him and make a showing out of, Island of Misfit Toys, Odell Beckham, Cooper Kupp, I don't want to call him a misfit toy, but he just doesn't have a solid franchise behind him, I want to say. But to make a team happen out of that, and he's a good leader there, it's impressive. But do you think he's a Hall of Fame candidate?
No.
No?
No. I don't think that. He's won 1 Super Bowl, and He's gone to the Pro Bowl once. He's got no MVPs, no All-Pros, nothing in that caliber. I do think it was a great season, but I don't think you can go to the Hall of Fame off one season.
You gotta look at career numbers and impact. And he had an impact on the Lions that I don't think a lesser quarterback could have had.
Hard to say. I think that he did elevate the Lions a little bit, but you can't tell me 12 years and no playoff wins. That's a Hall of Fame quarterback. Joe Burrow, first full year, takes him to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Takes a team that hasn't won a playoff game in 31 years.
These young quarterbacks.
To the Super Bowl.
These young quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield even. They've got some impressive stuff. And it is going to be real interesting to see this game in 10 years' time.
Yeah, that's why I have to say he's not a Hall of Famer yet. So if he wins one next year and they go back to back, then yes. Yeah. But he's not.
Von Miller's a free agent once more, but
I think they're gonna stay. I think, honest to God, they're gonna stay. I think a lot of them are gonna stay and take pay cuts.
Do they have the money for them though?
I think they're gonna take pay cuts.
You think they would take a pay cut?
I think a couple of them are. Odell, I think, staying.
They need to secure Odell. Yes, they need to secure Aaron Donald. But can they secure?
I think they can
Miller?
get Von
Can
Miller.
they secure Long Jr.? Can they secure?
I don't know. It's going to be hard to see. But the last thing I want to mention about the Super Bowl was the all-time great halftime show.
It was fantastic. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. I think there were some better ones. I think Prince is my favorite. Little Purple Rain in the rain. But still, West Coast love.
Just
the whole way through.
Everything, even down to the set, the map of Los Angeles on the field, and then the strip.
And having Kendrick on his block.
Yeah, and what made it for me, honest to God, was not only the songs, but the camera angles. It just made it feel so real.
The cinematography on Kendrick's was just amazing.
Yeah, it was so
that was like
cool.
A pure music video.
Yeah, it looked like a music video. And then Snoop Dogg, his camera angle, it was just felt so real.
Do you have an opinion on Eminem taking a knee?
I think people are making a bigger deal out of it than what it needs to be.
He literally said his knees were weak right beforehand, and it seemed like nobody paid attention to him.
And I don't understand why. In my opinion, it's a part of the act. I understand your pun there, but
I thought that was missed at first.
No,
thank you for recognizing.
I
that.
understand.
Yeah, his arms were a bit heavy too, but anyway, I commend him for it, and it's.
I think, honest to God, it looked a part of the act. It was Dr. Dre's turn.
Just kind of the lights went down, and
it was Dr. Dre's turn to play the piano. What's he supposed to do? Stand there and just look at nothing?
Yeah.
Taking a knee and
just
pretending that you're not there makes more sense.
Just stand there like a starfish. No, you gotta have a little, closer.
I thought the knee made sense there. But
same here. And if it was a statement,
the only thing the halftime show needed was at the end. I thought when they all got up on stage together.
Oh yeah.
I thought they were gonna freestyle. Each one of them just hand off the mic to each other. And just freestyle. I was gonna lose it. It was gonna be amazing if I think that happened.
Okay. Yeah. You got your.
I think it would have been great.
That was a beautiful halftime performance, but switching to a different performance in a different regard. Yeah. Another beautiful game. It is Six Nations in under 6 minutes, folks. One of my favorite segments. Wales coming up big against Scotland, winning by a penalty try. It was very surprising to see that because Scotland very well competed with England, and England is the powerhouse this year to beat. So for them to beat a competitor of the men themselves was very impressive, and to win in a fashion where it was just split right down the middle, 50-50 possession, 50-50, field territory, and it really came down to Scotland's handling errors, which is a knock-on.
So, for anyone not knowing what a penalty error is, do you want to explain that to them?
So a handling error is, offsides in rugby is, there's a moving line, much like soccer.
Mm-hmm.
And so you must pass behind that line if you're going to pass. You can kick in front of it, but you must pass laterally or behind you.
Mm-hmm.
So if the ball goes off your hands and forward, it's called a knock-on or a handling error. And Scotland was in the double digits. I want to say 13 of them. Doesn't matter too much, but Wales was in the thirds compared to their handling errors. And when that ball transfers possession through a set piece like a scrum or a line out, it really can flip the field in a 50-50 possession game, 50-50 territory game. That's all the difference. And you don't really need a line break if you got set pieces with two countries who are well on their set pieces. Wales and Scotland are pretty solid on their scrums and lineouts. But on the other side, England, I was expecting more from them against Italy. They only beat them 33-0, which is impressive.
But 33-0.
But against a team like Italy, I was expecting, 40, maybe 50, because their defense just did not look great against the French last week. Italy's defense did not look great against the French. So for England to not expose those through the clean breaks, through the missed tackles, through the line breaks, was almost disappointing. So England really needs to step up their quick game, and off the posts they really need to be able to expose that, because if you meet a team that does have strong posts like Ireland or Wales, you are not going to be able to get that ball and score. So later in the season, going to be real interesting, and obviously they had some substitutions or finishers, as our friend Lee Reed would call them.
So in that England game, would you say that the offense was on par then, or was it just the defense that lacked?
I think the offense lacked a little bit, and the defense for England was very good to allow a shutout in Six Nations. Well, to have a shutout in Six Nations is impressive.
Okay.
Yeah. So France and Ireland, a little contention there, 30-24. Ireland, I was expecting them to win, but France is a strong team. Their defense...
You were expecting Ireland to win?
Yes. I'd say this year rankings would sure up. England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, France, Italy.
Okay.
I don't want to... I feel bad putting my Welsh team that low, but I would like to see them get a few more keys to success, which would be need a bit more, shoring up on the set pieces. They did look good last weekend, but there's a lot of improvement there, a lot of room for improvement through their front row. And, it comes down to you need some speed off the edge. They don't have good wingers this year. Wales doesn't. So, Ireland-France game, pretty good game, but there wasn't much of a standout to it.
Okay.
I couldn't say a defense on either side was lacking or an offense, but...
What do you think France did, though, to pull up the W?
I think it just came down to the late game and exposing the forwards. Because it really looked like they were going up the middle a lot and exposing their pods to a lot more contact. And eventually that just opens up a little bit on the edge, and a set piece or, a good phase, a couple good phases to get it out to them, and off to the races.
Yeah.
But that's Six Nations in under 6 minutes. I never know if I'm going over 6 minutes or under, but I just talk until I'm tired.
I don't know if you're going 6 minutes until I start editing.
Yeah.
So we'll see what it is today.
Yeah, we'll see where the thumbnail ends up on YouTube. But what a weekend for NBA with the trade deadline and a couple good games.
Last Thursday was the trade deadline, and we... two massive trades we speculated last week on the show about the James Harden and Ben Simmons trade that ended up happening. My personal opinion, I think Brooklyn won the trade, and that they just took a lot from the 76ers.
Yeah.
I do understand that they got James Harden in Philadelphia, and he was a former MVP. and he's having a down year, and it's still like 22, 8, and 10.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's as good as what he used to be, and I do think what's hard for me is Philadelphia and Brooklyn are in the same division.
Yeah.
Like, even the conference.
It's going to be real tough to see team.
You just traded
yeah.
Point guard, 6'10" point guard that Brooklyn can use to their advantage with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. You gave him a shooter that you had, and you gave him a really good shooter, and then on top of that, you gave them a big that they didn't have. Brooklyn was weak in the bigs this year.
Yeah, and I'd say, to poke fun at an easy target, but I think James Harden's going to get even bigger there in Philly with those cheesesteaks. But, just like you said, that's a tough team to face now that you gave away those assets.
And you're going to have to face them in the playoffs, probably.
Yeah. They're definitely going to be two contenders.
And so, you just gave Brooklyn a lot of things that they needed.
Yeah.
And you gave up a lot of
that you needed too.
And then you gave them a first round pick too. I don't understand. I understand that, pairing Joel Embiid and James Harden together, but giving up that much I think was a little bit too much, because you gave Brooklyn such an advantage, I think, going in and playing these games down the stretch.
Yeah, and in my mind, it's just to draw a couple dots here and speculate, but back in the day when, probably late 90s, early 2000s, when the Yankees were kind of grabbing from Houston back in baseball, it just kind of seems a lot like that now, where Brooklyn's grabbing from a lot of teams that are competitors, to say the least. And you just got to ask yourself how they're doing it. But,
James Harden wanted out.
Yeah.
Daryl Morey was willing to pay whatever to reunite, because Daryl Morey was James Harden's GM in Houston for the longest time. So Daryl Morey was willing to pay whatever it took to get James Harden back, and I think he got fleeced in it, in my personal opinion. And then other NBA action, we have kind of a stat that is impressive, but I'd like to see it a little bit bigger before everyone starts comparing him to Michael Jordan, because that's what's going to happen here. DeMar DeRozan is on a 6-game point streak of scoring at least 35 points or more in each game. 232 points in the last 6 games, to be exact.
Fresh out of the freezer onto the cool throne.
If he doesn't get an MVP vote this year, or even top 5, I don't understand the MVP voting.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
He's had an unbelievable season.
Killing it. And a lot of people doubt that team as a whole, with the injuries, with the setbacks that they've had, but they have continued to
gelling
win.
Too. Chemistry,
yes.
DeRozan and Levine playing together,
Look
that was going to be
Clay and Curry out there.
DeRozan's the king of the mid-range game. Always has been and always will be.
He can pull up too, and it is just surprising to see him have it.
Yeah, he's...
I don't want to say surprising. It's good to see him have this great of a season.
It really is, considering everyone was like, is this the worst free agent signing in the summer? And he's gone out there and proved everyone wrong, which is nice to see. Yeah. And then I'll switch over to the other big league in the North America side, the NHL. We got some trade deadline coming up soon, and we got a player that is playing out of his mind, it almost feels like, to be a rookie.
Crushing it.
Matt Boldy, just last night, Monday night, Valentine's Day, he had a hat trick and an assist against the Detroit Red Wings to have 4 points, and he now has 14 points in 13 games.
And that's a good team to put up those numbers against. They have a strong defense, the Red Wings.
Yeah. And he's super big too. He's 6'2".
Yeah.
That's a big winger.
Especially nowadays.
Big winger.
Especially nowadays. Oh, yeah.
And I think he's just going to get better and better, and it's just a really strong start to a rookie campaign for him.
He's built like a defenseman. He flies like a honeybee. And, he stings like one too, and he's put that up.
Yeah, he's really good. He can tip
he's good in
too.
the
I
corners.
watched this tip goal last night. He had right off Matt Zuccarello's pass, and just redirected top shelf. It was really nice to see.
And he's a Swiss Army knife. He's good in the corners too, which is big in today's game with all these shots coming from the point.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important to get that defensive side in your offensive zone.
Yep.
Shirt up, and he secures the puck, and that's why he's coming away with big numbers.
That's why he was called up this year.
Yeah.
For the first time. He's proven that to the Minnesota Wild why he deserves to be in the lineup, and I think everyone can see that.
Oh yeah.
He's plus 10 also in these first 13 games of his career too. So he's obviously making a positive impact when he's on the ice. And then we had some more NHL action. In Montreal, we realized why we suck so bad, so we're blowing her up, and we traded away Tyler Toffoli to the Calgary Flames.
Yeah.
And in return, we got Tyler Pickett, first rounder, a fifth rounder, and a prospect from Sweden. I forget the name. He was also traded in the Sam Bennett trade that went from Florida to Calgary. Yeah. But overall, I think great trade for both teams. Mm-hmm. Calgary definitely needs some secondary scoring. They got that in Toffoli. He's a proven scorer. And then I think Montreal got what they needed is start to a rebuild.
Yeah.
More picks.
Yeah, and Calgary just really needs to shore up the offensive side, in my mind. And I think they've got it now.
I think this makes them a real contender.
Oh, yeah.
Like legit contender. I think he's going to fit in there well with Monahan and Dubé on the third line. I think that's where he's going to slot him. But
yeah, Islanders were doing a bit of a out west tour, and Calgary looked like they held up to him.
Yeah.
I know Islanders. No offense to the organization, but they aren't the gold standard in the league. But it's still a solid team to play against, and it's a good look. So to shore up against that team, it's pretty impressive. But who is in big need in the NHL right now? It's the Arizona Coyotes of a home.
Yeah.
They're playing in a Junior B League rink.
Yeah, next year they just announced their stadium and what it looks like.
5,000 people.
To describe it, it basically looks a little bit larger than the arena my high school team played in.
Yeah, it seats about 5,000. It's your classic bowl shape, one tier, probably about 15 levels.
I don't even think it's seats. It's just like benches. It looks like.
Well, it's still under construction.
Yeah, it might have seats in it by the time it's done.
Really hope so.
I would hope so. If not, that's gonna be.
That is some old school wire cages. If not, welcome to the Lambeau Stadium of the NHL. Everyone, you got benches for you.
Anyway. It's just sad to see, and I don't know what the solution is. If it's
moving games because of college practices.
I don't know if it's moving to a new city, but they gotta do something because
they're the Atlanta Flames. They're the Atlanta Thrashers. It's just there's a move coming.
It has to be because that's just too disappointing from an NHL franchise.
What hurts to see is there is showing in Arizona for that team and a good fan base.
It hurts for I feel bad for the players.
Oh yeah.
The players they get such a bad rap in this because now you got to play in front of this crowd of 5,000 people at most.
Yeah.
What's going to attract you to want to play in Arizona? Nothing.
Food, I guess.
Nothing.
I think they got a few specialties there.
They got nothing.
Yeah.
Yes, food, but
in terms of hockey,
nothing.
Yeah, and that's the thing is there's really nothing appealing besides, you look coaching, offense, defense, it's all a solid 5 out of 10.
Yeah,
and
they're not.
If you do have an option on where to play, you're not picking it.
You're not picking Arizona. You're getting traded there. That's the only way you're going to Arizona if you get traded there.
Drafted.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah. Which going to be interesting to see how that turns out because that's going to lead to some trades and I'm putting a 5-year time limit on Arizona if they can't make something happen.
So right now we're going to turn it to Mitchell Schut, curler, like we said, and we hope you enjoy.
The skip. Cue the music.
Welcome back to the Waterboyz podcast. This is episode 8. Today we have a special guest from P.E.I. here, a curler by the name of Mitchell Schut. He's won multiple titles, a couple at the U13 division, a couple at the U16, a couple at the U18, and a couple junior titles, and most recently went to Saskatoon for the junior games qualifiers?
Yeah, the World Junior
qualifiers. So we're happy to have you on the show, and can't wait to hear about it.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So when did you start curling?
Started curling when I was 4 or 5 years old. I got into it after my couple older brothers and older sisters started curling.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Did your parents do it?
No, they didn't actually. One of my older brothers watched it during the 2006 Olympics and decided he wanted to try it, and then all of us kind of followed in suit.
So was it like a family competition all the way up through for you? Or?
So I curled with my one brother until I was about 11 or 12, and then I branched off to start up my own team to work towards the Canada Games because he wasn't eligible.
Okay, so what position did you play on the team that you were on with your brother?
I played lead for my older brother, and now I skip my own team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, how did the positions go? It goes lead, skip, describe
it. It was lead, second, and then you have your third or vice or mate. There's a bunch of different names for it. Then you have your skip.
Yeah, and you throw 2 stones each, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, in each end.
Yeah.
So how long have you been playing with this team?
This team, we've been together, I believe this is our 3rd season now.
Okay, yeah. Have you been playing with any of them beforehand? Or?
Yeah, so I've played with one of them, my lead, Liam Kelly. We've been playing together for the past 6 or so years.
Okay.
And then just a couple years ago when our old team split up because 2 of them moved away for university, we brought on 2 new guys.
Yeah. So you're 18 playing for a U21 team. You know, is there a bit of, an age difference in a lot of your competitors? Does that lead to, some, I shouldn't say hostility in curling, but, some difficulties?
Yeah, we definitely noticed it in Saskatoon just this past November. We were one of the younger teams there. There were a couple other young teams, but in curling, I mean, it's a very formal sport. You're all kind of friends. You very rarely see that hostility. So everybody wants to see each other be successful. And the older guys, typically, when they see the younger teams, they might think of you as a less team. But then once you get on the ice, it kind of all goes away, and you're out there to be competitive and have some fun.
Yeah, there is a lot of sportsmanship in curling compared to other sports. You admit your own faults, and it seems very... you're very held accountable.
Yeah, you really are.
Yeah. So, when is that taught in curling? Is it right when you get into it that it's, a game with, respect for your opponent?
Yeah, I think kind of once you get started playing in any leagues or anything, it starts off, you usually start off every game with handshakes. It just kind of shows you how formal it is or how sportsmanlike the game is. But just... yeah, really, when you play games, you're there chatting with everyone. It's great for making new friendships and everything like that.
Being a skip, when I used to skip when I was very young, I love to chat during, with the other skip during the games. Do you do that?
Yeah, I do that a lot of the time. It's a lot of fun to pick their brains sometimes. When you're in a competitive environment, you maybe don't talk as much, but then when we're back here playing league games or practicing, it's a lot of fun to talk with the other skips, talk about what they're doing, and then just get to know each other. It's great to make new
Do you gain
friendships.
some knowledge talking to other skips?
Oh, yeah.
Is that what it's mostly for?
Yeah, a lot of people have a different look at the game, and not everyone's right. There's a ton of different ways to play the game, so it's fun to pick each other's brains. You learn a lot of new things about what they may see and you don't, and vice versa.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite tactic? Are you a bit more aggressive in it? Or are you a bit more, set back and defensive in your throwing?
It depends on who we're playing. We try to go into a game with a game plan, depending on if we know our competition.
Yeah.
So depending on the team, some teams will right away throw a center guard and try to steal or try to get our deuce, whereas other times, maybe if we don't know the team we're playing, we'll be a little more relaxed and just kind of try to get our groove going before we be aggressive or anything.
And a center guard is the stone right at the top of the house, the circle,
Yeah,
right?
above the house.
Yeah.
So I just want to go right back from the get-go. U13, you found success early, and you won a couple titles there. Did you find you were a lot better than the competition on P.E.I. right away, or was it just overall the team was better?
At that point, I definitely had an advantage just because I played competitively with my older brother.
Mm-hmm.
And for my first U13 title, I actually put together a team. There were 3 of us around my age that all played with older teams at a competitive level. So we all came together to form a younger team. So we definitely had a large advantage over...
Kind of like a super team at a young age.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of what it was. We formed a little super team where we were there at 10 and 11 and 12 and... just had a major advantage over everyone at that point.
And did that just stay through like up to U16? Did you guys still just dominate the competition on P.E.I.?
Yeah, so once I was about probably 11, I split up with that team actually because we all kind of had our own normal teams that we were with and made my own team, but we invested a lot into traveling off of P.E.I. to compete in more competitive tournaments, just for more competition. That kind of gave us an edge over other teams on P.E.I. and allowed us to be successful.
Did you find that the competition on P.E.I. was like a step behind in a way?
It's not that it's a step behind, there's just a lot less teams.
Mm-hmm.
So
where is your competition coming from?
So like, we really only have one competitive team in P.E.I. other than us. That's our age, and then there's a couple younger teams. So a lot of our competition, Nova Scotia has seen a lot of success. So that's where we try to play a lot of our competition.
Yeah, Mayflower tournaments are pretty popular to go to. A lot of off-island people come, or on-island people come to Nova Scotia for that tournament early in like September, October. It's when it starts.
Yeah, so is it Atlantics or is it, the prairies? Is it out west? Where in Canada would you say is your biggest competition?
Out west is definitely, they have more resources for competition. They have a lot more high-level teams. So I think the big difference between out west and like the Maritimes is you don't have as many teams in the Maritimes.
Yeah.
So you have your 1 or 2 competitive teams. Nova Scotia's got a few extras from each province, whereas out west you've got 8 to 20 teams that are all competing for a provincial title.
So you're 18, so any teams from Nova Scotia that you've played against growing up that like stick out to you since you play them a lot?
I mean, Owen Purcell's won. He actually won our Saskatoon World Junior Qualifier. He's always been one of those teams that we've always wanted to try to keep up with. He's a couple years older than us, and then Nathan Young from Newfoundland's been a big competition with us. Or against us, and he actually came second in that World Junior Qualifier. But we've always competed back and forth with him in a lot of our tournaments.
Yeah, so there's only 4 on a curling team. So when you have a standout star like that on a team, what impact does that have on the other 3?
I think it just really motivates your teammates. When you see that you have one really good curler on your team, you want to be better to help them get there. And I think you see that gap like really tighten. You'll have one really good player, but then once they provide knowledge to everyone else, you see the whole team get a lot better together. Because being a good team plays a lot bigger of a role than having one really good standout player.
And it seems like a really hard sport to master, with all the different tactics you can take and all the different, setups and advantages and defenses you can have. So when did you really feel comfortable curling? I mean, I'd say you've had a long experience, but when did you really feel...
It's hard to feel comfortable in this sport just because you never see the same thing twice. But I think just from playing games and playing high caliber games over and over again, you begin to feel more comfortable. So I think once I was able to play my first nationals really and see what that competition outside of P.E.I. and outside of the Maritimes was like, I was able to feel a lot more comfortable competing against those teams because I knew what to expect.
Yeah.
So, like, going back a little bit, your first nationals, was it a wake-up call then for you, kind of? Like, holy shit, we're not against like P.E.I. teams anymore, or Maritime teams, we're against the whole country. Deal.
We definitely went in with no expectations. We weren't expecting to make the playoffs or anything like that. We were a young team to be at the Nationals in the first place. And we went in and we finished 0-5, which hurt a little, but we were pretty happy because we played competitive games. And we knew that because of how well we played, we were able to compete at that level. Regardless of us winning games that year, we knew we had what it took if we put in some extra work to compete at that level.
Yeah. Do you watch film and really, break down their game, or is it really hard to do that? Like you said, you don't see the same thing twice.
So our team, we after every game in a tournament, we sit down and we go through the game. We don't necessarily watch the whole game back, but we go through key situations that our coach picks out, and we'll re-watch them to figure out what we could have done better.
As a former curler, after a game, key situations. If it went the wrong way for you guys, what went wrong in that situation, you always want to talk about it. So it's not, I wouldn't say you're not watching film, but it's kind of something that just sticks in your mind a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah, so if anything happens during the game and I'm like, oh, maybe we could have done that differently, regardless of if it went well or not, it's one thing I kind of try to tuck in the back of my mind for us to talk about after the game. Even if it ended up going really well for us, maybe I thought, oh, well, we could have done this.
Yeah.
And it worked this time, but maybe next time we should try this other thing.
Just a little bit risky, and sometimes the risk pays off in curling, but sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're just looking to capitalize on everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big part of curling, is capitalizing on your opportunities.
Yeah, so do you look at more your side of the game or your opponent's side of the game?
We try to just dissect our side of the game, because different teams play different ways. We have some teams that we play so many times that we kind of know how we want to play them. Like Owen Purcell, for example. We have a game plan when we go in to play them now because we've played them so many times.
Yeah.
Whether or not it works, they're a hard team.
We had a game plan too, and it never worked.
Yeah, it's really hard to maintain that after the first and second hit.
Yeah, exactly.
Once, it kind of just feels like you go in with a game plan against them, and then somehow it gets into you just turn into playing his game instead of playing your own game, and it's hard to get out of it, I find.
Yeah, that's one thing that they do a really good job of, is they play the way they want to, and they always seem to get you into it.
Yeah.
And once you're in it and then you get down early against a team like that, they're hard to beat.
Yeah. So, just a little side note here. I've noticed as a hockey player, there's good ice and there's really bad ice, right? Yeah. So what in curling justifies bad ice? Is it the pebbling? Is it, the shaves on top? What do you look for on a sheet of ice?
So we watch them pebble the ice to kind of see how much pebble gets put down, but really what we look at is how long it takes the rock to travel from one hog line to the next. Okay. Which dictates the speed of the ice, and then we look at how much it's curling. So on a draw to the button, are you giving edge of the 4 foot, edge of the 8 foot? What kind of ice are you giving for it to curl in? Yeah. So ideally we want
middle of the 8,
14.5. And middle of the 8 or a bit more to the button on club ice. And then once you get to nationals, you're closer to middle of the 12 foot and 15.5.
Yeah, and so pebbling, just for our audience that's new to curling, right? Pebbling is when they spray, just droplets of water on the ice and they shave off the top, and that's what the stone is curling on. Yeah. It's not a flat sheet of ice, because you never get a curl there,
no,
right?
You wouldn't get anything. Yeah. That wouldn't work well.
And the hog line is where you need to release the stone by, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, there you go.
You have to get it over the other hog line in order to be in the play zone.
Yeah, and so the house is the full circle and the button's just right in the middle.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Yeah, so how long did it take for you to really get the nomenclature, the jargon of curling down? Is it kind of more of a, you need a dictionary of curling?
It's just experience. Yeah. Really, getting to know curling and everything like that. It's in playing games over and over and over again. There's not really, you can't really sit down and read this and then you're a master at curling and you know all the strategy and all of that. You learn as you play and as you go. Yeah, so you've been playing since you're a youngster. You come into Saskatoon for these Canada Juniors. How did that feel? Did you feel you had the experience to go in there, or was it just a bit more,
let's see how this plays out and really attack it later on.
So for two of us, it was our fourth national, whereas our other two guys, it was their first national. So for us going into this one, this was about gaining experience, because we've still got two more chances at this junior qualifier. So we knew we could go and compete. Our goal was to make the playoff rounds, which we weren't able to do. We were just short. But our biggest thing was we wanted to compete to get them experience and see how we stood up against the best teams in Canada.
What game do you think was the best for your team as a team building game, I guess you would call it, in that nationals experience?
So our last round robin game, we played Ontario, and at this point we were 1-3 and they were 4-0. So we went into that game. It didn't mean anything for us because we were out regardless, unfortunately. But we went in and we still wanted to play our A game, and we were able to actually win that game in an extra end. But it was we played well top to bottom for our team and just kept in the game because we knew we could compete with those better teams, and we were able to pull out that win, which really told us we can compete at that level.
Yeah, and what do you think your wall was? Where do you think you fell apart? Not that you did fall apart,
No.
but what hurt you guys?
We really struggled. Our opening game was against New Brunswick, who is a team that we play constantly. We play them at least 4 times every season, and we came out and we didn't have a good game. None of us were sharp. And dropping that first game was really tough for us. And then the next couple games we played Alberta, where we played pretty well. We just didn't get the right side of the edge. And then Manitoba, we just had an awful game. All that was.
So that first game against New Brunswick, you said you play them 4 times a year. Do you usually beat them? And was it just hard to get down your draw weight right away, or did you guys have time to practice that, or was it just?
So going into that game that I can recall, we hadn't lost to them with this lineup yet. So going in, we knew that we had a bit of an edge. But we also knew that they would come in with a game plan, having played us so many times, and we knew that they were a good team. And before the tournament, you get a pre-tournament practice on each sheet where we tried to get our draw weight down. But in that game, we really struggled to have the right amount of weight, which in turn messes up your line, which makes it hard to execute. And their skip played a really, really good game.
Yeah. What is draw weight?
Just kind of like the amount of time it takes for you to get into the rings.
Okay.
So you really want to have that perfect weight, so at any point in the end and in the game, you can just get it into the rings at will.
Exactly, get it into the house.
Yeah. But so this year you practice now a lot, but ever since January started, P.E.I's kind of gone into a lockdown. So what's the season been like ever since you guys got back from nationals in November?
So we got back from nationals and we just kind of took a week off. We played a league game and that was really it that week. And then we were into December. So we practiced for a couple weeks. We had a tournament down in Montague, and then we kind of shut down completely. So for December, we didn't get on the ice at all. The first couple weeks of January, we were actually allowed to get out on the ice just to throw some rocks, which was good for us. And then we went through another full shutdown until about a week ago when we were allowed to practice again. So now we're practicing and gearing up for our provincials coming up here in a week and a half or so.
Yeah, is it like riding a bike, or does it take a little time to get back into the swing of things?
It's like riding a bike, but it hurts the first couple of times out on the ice. You really feel it, but it doesn't take too long to get back.
Yeah.
So this provincial's coming up. What do you guys expect to come out of it? And I'm expecting another championship probably from you guys.
Yeah, so we're going in and we're hoping to obviously win it so we can represent P.E.I again. But our biggest thing going in is to just go in, play a game at a time. We know that these other teams we're playing against can steal a win and beat us. We've lost to them before. So we just got to make sure we're on our A game so we can come out on top.
Yeah. Now, you've been curling for a while, obviously, and that's your main sport, but what other sports have you played? Did you play a little baseball?
I played baseball up until a couple years ago, right from when I was 4 or 5 as well. So I played baseball and curling seasonally.
Yeah, so, multi-sport athlete. How do you think that helps you? Is there much of a carryover from curling to baseball?
The sports are very different, but they're very team-based. So I think it taught me a lot about what it takes to be a good teammate in baseball that I was able to convert over to curling. And just trying to develop myself as a leader in both sports really helped me out in curling, being able to communicate well with my team.
And there's a lot of strategy in both of them. You know, as a batter, you got to know pitch styles, the different pitchers. You got to know what style of pitch they really lean on. So, did that help too?
Yeah, I think constantly having to think on your feet it's a big thing in curling, but it's a big thing in baseball when you're either pitching or hitting or playing the field. You got to be quick to react, quick to think of what you may have to do. So I think that really helped me just be able to make decisive decisions.
So you've been playing curling for about 14 years. What's been a great memory in those 14 years for you?
I think one of my favorite would be when we won to represent P.E.I. at the Canada Games. That was when I made my team.
The one that's coming up or the one before?
Sorry, back in about for the 2019 Canada Games.
Okay.
So we played down for that in 2018, and that was one thing that we built our team to work towards that, and that was one of my big goals. So it was really exciting to win that to represent PEI, and then going to the Canada Games was obviously an awesome experience.
So from that experience, what was the biggest takeaway for you?
So from the Canada Games, we did not play well at all. We went 1-9, I think. So it was a step back from our nationals in the previous year. So what we took away from that is we really needed to go back home and practice harder and be more prepared for nationals that were coming up that we had qualified for right before the Canada Games, I believe, or it might have been right after. But we wanted to prepare better for those nationals. So that was kind of our main takeaway. We weren't there yet.
So people sometimes don't understand how much work goes into practicing for a curling tournament. So can you just explain how many times you were on the ice before a nationals event or before any event? Are you guys on the ice 5 times a week or something like that?
So in the fall, so from about September to December, we practice 2 days a week. We have a league game a week, and then we usually try to have a tournament every other weekend, where most of the time we're traveling off of PEI for those. Then once we get into December, January, February, we're into our provincials. So at that time, we slow down how many tournaments we're playing, and we take more time to go and practice. So let's say our provincials are in Montague. We'll try to get down to Montague a few times to practice on that ice down there. And then leading up to nationals, we try to play competitive games against some of the better teams on PEI down in Montague as well.
So how long are your practices? A couple hours long?
They're usually anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. So we practice out of Cornwall. Our practices are usually about an hour and a half. Whereas when we go to a different club, like if we're going down to Montague, we try to have a longer 2-hour practice set.
Yeah. So throughout the entire match, you have a 72-minute time limit, right?
We have a thinking time.
Okay.
Which is for 8 end games, it's 30 minutes, and for 10 end games, I think it's 36 or 38 or something like that. Yeah.
So obviously you're strategizing there, but when the other team has the hammer, right, and there's just kind of this you can't do much because there's not an active defense as there is in baseball or in any other sport, really. So what's going through your head when you're seeing that hammer being thrown and you just got to hope for the best?
A lot of worry, depending on the situation, obviously, but usually we're just sitting there thinking through what are we going to do next end if they make this. Yeah. Rather than worrying about what's happening there, we try to think, okay, if they make this is what we're going to do next end kind of thing.
Is it kind of is your game plan for most teams just let's try and get a force of 1, or do you go for aggressive play type and try and get a steal?
We are a team that steals a fair amount, which we steal a fair amount in the Maritimes, whereas we actually found the opposite at our nationals in Saskatoon. We usually aren't great with our hammer, whereas in Saskatoon we took a lot of deuces, which is really good for us. So I think our game plan is typically to try to steal, but obviously depending on the situation, we sometimes try to go for a force.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for the steals, do you try to put yourself in that position, or do you just take that opportunity when it comes to you?
It depends on the game situation, but usually we take that opportunity when it comes to us.
Yeah.
Usually we're probably playing for a force.
Okay.
And then let's say they make a certain call or they miss a shot, then we might say, okay, now's our time to kind of jump on that and try to steal.
Yeah, is it a bit of a gamble then?
Yeah, it's always a bit of a gamble because if you were to then miss, you could set up a big end
Yeah.
for them. Or even if you do make the shot and then they make a nice shot, you could be in big trouble. So big thing is weighing that risk reward.
Yeah. So obviously those big gambles lead to some high octane moments, you know. So walk us through one of your favorite shots or your favorite placements, or something that really just rattled the opposing team.
One of my favorite shots was probably in Saskatoon when we were playing Ontario. So I don't throw fourth stones. I throw third stones, and then my mate throws the last two stones.
Yeah. Okay.
So it would have been the second or fourth end coming back to the glass. We could have played a out-turn draw for one, or we had an in-turn angle run for, I think it was 3. And usually my fourth is like big on the draws. He's like, no, you know what, I'm feeling it, let's throw it. And he threw it, we made it to perfection. And from there we were just like, okay, we can win this game. We can really compete with this team. And they were there like, they came into the game not expecting us to be great because we were 1-3. And that, I think, made them realize, wait, we have to take these guys seriously, which made it a really fun game to play.
Yeah. So 4 nationals under your belt there, and finished 7th in this one in total, 4th in your pool. Do you have a favorite city, province, place to play at?
I really want to play in nationals here in P.E.I.
Okay.
So I've been in St. Andrews, New Brunswick. I've played a couple in Alberta now, and then I was out in Saskatchewan. So I really want to play one here in P.E.I., but it's a lot of fun to go out west. There's a lot, I don't know if it's a bigger of a curling community, but there's a lot more teams that'll show up to watch. You have a lot more people your age watching when you go out there. Whereas here, it's a tight-knit curling community, so you know everyone, but they're not necessarily competitive curlers.
They're just more supportive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
So, I just want to know, do you find that the competition between you guys from P.E.I. and, say, a team from Ontario, where they have to play probably about 10 times more teams than what you guys have to play to get into a national spot, do you think that helps them more than what it helps you when it comes to these big tournaments like the nationals?
I think it helps them more because they have to play more of those high stress, high leverage games.
Mm-hmm.
They're beating 10 really, really strong teams to then qualify for nationals, where they're playing teams probably of similar level.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for us, going into our juniors coming up, there's only 4 guys teams.
Yeah.
Really?
So even if all 4 are the top caliber teams in Canada, we're still not playing as many high leverage games. So that's kind of why we travel to Nova Scotia and such, to try to play higher leverage games.
Just get those looks.
Yeah.
And is it just like a lack of interest, do you think, on the island, or people not knowing about curling as much, or?
I think, curling in P.E.I. in the past few years has really declined, and I think it's a bit of a lack of interest, and there's a bit of a lack of access. There's a lot of clubs shutting down, like the Charlottetown Curling Club this past year closed.
Yeah.
And so that's a big hit on the curling community.
It's a shelter now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So, yeah, because I tried going just to go out and throw a couple stones there once, and it was like ghost town in there, like a ghost building in there. So it's like, it's kind of sad to see the island not have as much of a curling support, but like, how do these big teams, like the ones like representing P.E.I. and the Briar and stuff, like, do you practice with them, like, because it's such a small community?
Yeah, it really is. So this year we didn't get to play our tankard to qualify for the Briar, unfortunately, which we were really going into hoping to at least do well in. But the team who's representing P.E.I, we competed with him years ago on the junior level because he'd be 4 or 5 years older than me. We don't play games against them to practice. We've practiced more against teams our age. But that's definitely things we consider doing when we prepare for nationals. And one team we try to play competitive games against is Suzanne Bird, who goes to the Scotties for P.E.I. She's seen a lot of success.
So preparing for nationals and playing against teams like that, do you just kind of use it as picking their brains to try and learn more information?
Yeah, so I think we're both there to get things from each other. Obviously, we have a lot less knowledge than a team like Suzanne Bird, so we're probably getting a lot more from it than they are. But really, we're trying to pick their brain a bit. But even more than that, it's just to play a competitive game against a team that we probably shouldn't beat, or a team that is better than us in some ways, to try to be prepared to go into a game where maybe you're not the favorite.
Yeah, that way, you get that, what's the best look we can get, and then, the other teams see, I don't want to say easier, but, you're a bit more prepared for them.
Yeah.
So what's next for you in curling? When's your next nationals?
So we have our U21 junior provincials coming up in a week and a half. It's the end of February. And so we're hoping to win that. And if we were to win that provincial, we would qualify for nationals, which are the last week of March, I believe, in Ontario.
Where in Ontario?
Stratford.
Okay, yeah.
Are you excited to go there if you win? Is that a place?
Yeah.
Ontario's been a place you wanted to play?
Yeah, I would really like to go there because I have family who live near Stratford, Ontario. So it'd be really cool to, one, just be able to see them and maybe have them come out and see me curl a bit would be fun.
Yeah. So other than curling plans, what are your future plans in terms of school? Do you plan on trying and making curling a full-time career in the future? Or what does the future look for you?
Yeah, so right now I'm taking sport and recreation management at Holland College. And I really want to work in the sporting area. Being a pro curler doesn't really pay great.
No.
So you kind of need, even if you go pro in curling, you need another job to kind of sustain you. So I would obviously love to be able to compete at a high level in curling, play at the Briars, stuff like that. But I'm also trying to be realistic with my expectations and build a career on the side as well as try to live my curling dreams.
Yeah, what's a dream job then?
I mean, I would love to get into like sports analysis.
Okay.
That's like a top goal, but slowly working my way potentially to get an opportunity there.
Well, we hope that everything's gonna work out. It's looking like it's gonna work out with your provincials with all the COVID restrictions being lifted this next week. We wish you the best of luck with that and the best of luck with the rest of your season, and we appreciate you coming on the podcast today. And for anyone watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're watching or listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, don't forget to follow along. We appreciate you and thank you and have a great day.
Cue the music.